right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, my name is Danny, and I am a product manager at WoodWing. And I work in software that helps brands, those could be book brands, magazines, newspapers, different publishers or agencies, uh, to organize their files. And we were invited today to talk a little bit about technology and how people, specifically book publishers, leverage technology to overcome some of the challenges that they see in their daily workflows. What we try to do is help people with efficiency and with process. So we've been invited to talk on those topics today. So next slide, please. I did not come alone. I brought some friends with me. I have several people who will be speaking at one point or another. We have Dan, who you may have seen at some of our booths at various trade shows. I also brought with me Dale and Louie, who are on our professional services team, and they are very familiar with working with publishers and hearing firsthand some of the struggles that people go through while they are trying to revisit how they work with technology, how they create their files, and everything firsthand. So I did not want to be the only person talking about what we see. So again, we'll get to their part of the story in a bit. But if I look at the agenda, we have several different things that we're going to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about the evolving landscape of book publishing, and then we'll connect that into title management, how it works with AI boosted content production. We'll show you a firsthand demo with real use cases, and then some success stories we've seen from people who have worked with us, what they've noticed, what worked for them, what didn't. And then we'll wrap things up and make sure that you have time to ask any questions that you may have. So we've got a lot to talk about today. If you have questions, feel free to put them in that side panel chat. All right, so getting into where we are today. In the beginning, there was print. And we know that it started years and years ago, right? We had the Gutenberg press, everything started with block letters. And around 1971 is when publishing got incredibly exciting, right? Because this was the first time we took encyclopedias and we digitized them. Suddenly, now I don't have to go door to door selling giant bookcases of books. And now everything's in a digital format. What does that mean? Oh, how do I need to create these files? Roughly 20 years later, keep going, go back one for me. We launched the World Wide Web. Now, everyone has access to all of this information. How people start consuming it changes. 20 years after that, social media comes along. Now people are getting their information just as fast from social media sites. When tablets were first launched, now people are reading books on EPUB and learning and figuring out, how do I work with this? So what we see is that there's roughly every 20 years, there's a major interruption within the world as to how people consume media. That's no different than today. And I would guess AI and the rise that we see there. Next slide for me. So I empathize with you, right? Because we're struggling with all kinds of different assets. We're trying to publish things to print, to digital, maybe to a website. You've got all of this content to manage, and it's challenging, right? Because your standard is changing, your file formats are probably changing. And that's where WoodWing really shines. It's our mission to help publishers become more efficient with their processes and make them future-proof so that as this world continues to shift and change, you are best positioned to be able to serve all of your different channels. Next slide for me. So this is a little bit of an old quote, but back in 2013, there was this wonderful quote that 74% of publishers have at least one mobile app. I would guess many of you have more than one mobile app, or you have more than one ebook. And so that means you're having to manage a lot of different things at the same time. You had it timed perfectly. Go to the next slide for me. All right. So you've got a lot to think about and a lot to juggle, right? Every time there's a new channel or something new comes along, it becomes expensive to try and figure out, how do I publish to WordPress? How do I publish a textbook on a tablet? And it's time consuming every time you have to figure out this new process, this new workflow. And I empathize that it's hard to find the right people who can help you get to that platform. So finding those experts is going to be critical. So with all of that said, next slide. I'm going to pass it over to our experts, the professional services team, and they're going to talk a little bit about how title management works and leveraging technology. So take it away, Dale.
Thanks, Danny. So if we could go to the next slide here, please. Thank you. So based on the dynamic changes that have happened over the landscape, as Danny was just mentioning, managing book title information is a challenge for all book publishers. This is where having a centralized system core to the organization, such as a title management tool, helps capture everything that's nicely in order to then produce and deliver content to different endpoints that were touched on a little bit, but even more so going into Amazon, social media, Onyx feeds, and so on. We could go into the next slide, please. So when we start working with publishers in the book industry, we notice that in managing a book title, there's a lot of different pieces of content to oversee. Something that we've helped publishers with, for example, is auto-generating a folder structure. In a title management tool, once a book title has been set to, say, awarded or another status that's been determined, through integrations with a digital asset management system and or editorial production tools, we're able to auto-generate the initial folder hierarchy that will be used throughout the life cycle of a book. So from inception to archive, and perhaps hopefully reprint. Depending on the workflows and the tools involved, it's possible to also generate tasks, assignments for different roles, as well as have bilateral communication between systems. This can improve the ability to report on the progress of a book title. Another example is auto-generating content at a different status within a workflow. For instance, when a layout is set to a proof status, a certain PDF with particular parameters can be automatically generated. These PDFs can be found within that folder structure that was initially auto-generated. All of this is allowing for consistency across the management and creation of your content. We also realized that publishers needed to have a tighter way of communicating interdepartmentally, allowing multiple departments to be in sync throughout the workflow and avoiding the siloing of departments. For instance, sales being aware when a manuscript is at a certain stage in a workflow allows for better time management and marketing of your intellectual property. This can be organized with, for instance, a status that triggers an email notification and commenting within certain tools, creating more transparency in the workflow and alleviating any potential for duplicative efforts. And then lastly, we know that when you publish a book, you've created all kinds of content. In the best case scenario, this is where your content will get reused in the future. Or perhaps you have to go back to some archives for legal, asking about fact checking something from years ago. So there's a variety of historical reasons an archive of your content is beneficial. Having your material organized in, say, a title management system and easily accessible allows for maximum reuse. This is where having a title management source of record can help, along with editorial production tools. Integrating these is where publishers that we work with have experienced success as the industry continues to digitize and demand faster, more flexible production and distribution cycles. I have one more slide here. Just saying, keeping your team in sync, your assets in order, and your books on time. Next, we're going to explore the implementation side of things. Louis, take it away.
Thank you very much, Danny and Dale, for setting up the overall theme of the webinar here. So again, my name is Louis Mejia, and what I'll be doing is going over some of those points that we've been discussing here, that Danny and Dale have been that brought up, and really dive into how we get to the final goal, right? So we start off with getting the house in order, right? So first of all, we need to look internally to see how it is that the process is being implemented now. What are the tasks that are challenging, and really look at who's working on what? So to Dale's point, making sure that there's that transparency between all the different departments. Also, assessing what you have. Everything is probably a lot of times stored in many different locations. So determining exactly where things live and being able to come up with a plan to then really streamline the process and then help with those improvements, essentially. So planning this process of aligning your tools, your departments, your roles really does take some time. And there's a lot of vendors or partners that you can partner with and help you through this process of assessing how it is that you're working today. There are a lot of beta testing that takes place. We actually have quite a few where we have worked with clients, especially as I talk a little bit later on about things like AI, which Danny had mentioned. That can be kind of a little overwhelming and unfamiliar to us, new technologies that come into place. So partnering and finding those individuals out there that have gone through this process of getting the house in order, that foundational level, so that then you can start to look at how it is that you're working and look at the different workflows that are in place. As you are developing these new workflows by assessing how things are being done, then you can also help with the change management at the same time in parallel, where you can determine different key stakeholders in this review process of getting the house in order to really help with the buy-in and the acceptance of these tools. I have some great discussions with a lot of clients where we'll start to talk different departments and people just start talking about what they're doing, how they're doing it. And what I hear, one of the quotes that I hear all the time is, I didn't realize that you were doing that. Why are you doing that? A lot of times it's because it's just the way things have been done. So really this whole process of aligning these tools, your departments, your assets, your content itself, really helps in exposing and then helping with those efficiencies that can be gained later on in the process. And then when we do talk a little bit about AI, it's very important to start with some governance and guidelines on how your organization is going to use it. It's very, I know that AI is new, but it has been around for a few years now, and people are diving in at first. So it's good to kind of just pull back a bit and then make sure that you communicate to your teams. These are the standards for our organization, or start to develop those, and that there will be some additional support on how to use different tools like AI, for example. So let's talk a little bit about process, management tools, and then how AI ties into it as well. So as Dale mentioned, having a tool like title management is extremely important. Having that foundation, that source location, central repository of the titles that you currently have, that you are acquiring, and that you will be reprinting perhaps, and how that information is gathered. Now, a lot of our clients do this. Well, pretty much all clients do this, but it's spread out through many different tools like spreadsheets or a partial tool that only has some of the information. And there's a lot of time that's required and inefficiencies in gathering all the information in order to start even working on a title, to getting the approvals, to getting the right teams together. And I'll show some examples later on in my demos here on how that can be implemented. So once title management has been put in place and the schema or how you're going to organize things based on standards like BISAC information, title information, ISBN, and so on, that's going to help drive the production, the archiving, and legacy, and then the reprinting. Within there, then we'll go ahead and look at how certain tools like automation and AI can help facilitate that entire process. But it's really about looking again at how you're working, today, how you're managing your titles, what tools to put into place, right? And what is the urgent requirement, right? Some of our clients, they need a title management system, they need an editorial system, and they need a DAM, a digital asset management system. And that's a lot to take on. So taking a phased implementation approach is very important. So where should you start? It might be that you really need to get all of your legacy content in one place because of all the duplication that is taking place, as Danny and Dale mentioned. And that's very important because there have been times where in an organization, there might be a photo shoot, a requirement for some kind of imagery where 3 different departments are acquiring and working on retrieving the same type of material or working on the same type of theme or story or article. So it's really important to determine where is the need. It could be that it is a very large project and you're trying to implement everything at once, but we would highly recommend phasing out these projects. So starting out with really where is the first need. And again, that could be title management, that could be the DAM, or it could be the editorial system. Again, there are people and vendors and partners that can help with this process. But it really takes the time to look at how the organization is working and these processes as well. So with AI, anything is possible. And that is very exciting and very daunting as well. So when you are considering AI tools and how to implement, what to implement in your organization, it's very important to think about a few different topics that I'll go into a little more in detail. The level of complexity and understanding really how AI should work for you. There's a lot of unfamiliarity with AI, and some people embrace it, some are a little hesitant to it. So helping your groups get into a more comfortable state by defining how it is that you're going to use AI within the organization is very, very important. Again, talking about the ethical considerations, making sure that the content is safe, using public models versus private models, and how to train those models as well. So you need to think about and prepare for, there are things that you don't know what you don't know, right? So as you're going through the process, you have to be agile in the approach, and making adjustments along the way to what you really will need. And then you have to start to think about what to consider as well.
Yeah, and I'll chime in here too, especially because I have the product manager, software manager point of view, is that I understand, gosh, there's a lot of concerns with, oh, is AI getting trained on my content? How do I use it? How do I leverage this? And so at WoodWing, it was always something that we set the bar first at anything's possible. Let's go try some things, see what works with people, and then get actual book publishers, get feedback from people. What do they like? What do they not like? And the more that we experimented, the more people saw, oh, this can be achieved. Small steps are big, and just learning about what can be done. So small steps are huge here.
That's right. So to get a little more detailed into it, again, understanding the complexity is to be able to enable the different roles, the authors, the writers, the creative designers, to make sure that they are in control. Not that AI is taking over, but that really it is there to assist. So again, familiarizing the different groups on exactly what to expect. This is how we are approaching introducing AI. So we need feedback. So trying POCs, proof of concepts, is really important, again, for that buy-in potential. And then also the potential for growth, right? Like as Danny said, we see a lot of people that are very excited once they get into and start to use the tools that are available out there. And I'll make sure that I cover that in my following slides here in a bit. But again, ethical considerations on how to use the tools for AI. There are ways to protect and keep the content safe from being used improperly. And then the communication barrier, right? Working towards a specific or certain goals to increase the efficiencies with generative AI. So that is very important as well as we're going through the AI process.
Yeah, I think a good example, because again, just want to make sure that everyone here is on their best foot forward if you're working with AI. Some companies have come to us and asked, hey, can we use AI to replace our editorial team? Whoa, that is a goal. But what if instead we use AI to help your editorial team become 30% faster? Is that something that would help? Yeah. Oh, okay. We can get to that. Great. That is a measurable goal that we can all work towards. So just making sure that you have a shared goal that you can work to, and make sure that AI is your assistant rather than your superstar and in the limelight. Okay. Go ahead, Louis.
Thank you. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll go into some demos. I would love to give you the full end-to-end solutions that we have come up with, but that would require its own webinar, I believe, or webinars, I should say, plural. So I'll just show some highlights here on some of the things that we have done, and then I'll show some outcomes of that. So again, first we have title management. So again, this is where the central core repository of your title information resides. And how to implement this is really important. So that's where you want to work with partners that have gone through this process before. But this really this initiates the entire process, right? So this is your data source, master source of record, where you determine who the author is, the type of title, formats, BISAC information, all the metadata around your titles here. So from here, this is where, as Dale was speaking to, certain actions or triggers will start the process to push from title management to your WIP, or work in progress, whether that's in an editorial system or if you're using file shares and so on. We highly recommend having some sort of editorial system in place. But here, things initiate, and then they kick off the editorial workflow. So we've created automations here, some with AI, some with just logic that we've written, that once a project is ready to be worked on, whether that's a new title or a reprint title, that triggers the location where people will actually be working, where that transparency will come into place. And this is really important because these systems will give you a snapshot on where titles are in their current process, right? 30% is still in development, 30% is ready to be shipped, for example, and there's still some development and transformations that need to happen from, say, print to digital. Or maybe you're starting on a digital product and you determine that there is a market out there for having a print version of this. So having an editorial system that's kicked off by title management is, number one, going to save you time on all the different tasks that individuals, the different roles, have to do. And that's really important. Rather than manually putting information into one system and then going into another one, and then tracking all this information in a spreadsheet is very time consuming. Add that, multiply that by the hour, by the day, by the week, by the month, by the year, and that time grows exponentially. So automating these systems and integrating these systems is very crucial to get you your time to market much quicker. So once, again, you have your information, your foundation, title management, that can trigger off the work in process and the editorial workflow. From there, then we can start to incorporate tools like AI, where, let's say for a reprint, we can use AI tools to auto-generate that initial book as a starting point to then facilitate your design team, your editorial teams to have a jump start, essentially, be further along in the process, right? Our timelines, I actually have an educational background, K through 6 book publishing. And we used to have back in, I'll say, I guess I'll date myself, back in the 90s, some time frames that were a year to 2 years of development time. And then we were told, okay, you have to cut that down to 6 months. And not only did we go from national to maybe one state product, but then now every state wanted their own custom version of these books. So we had to we had to go out there and look what's available out there. What can we use to help manage and facilitate and enable our resources to be able to handle that much volume, right? So these tools are really meant to help with the load that we have on our different roles, our resources, our employees that are working and creating this content. So we have tools like AI layout, auto generation, which again, triggered from a title management system that we are going to do a reprint, will grab information that has been published, that has been archived in the DAM, pull it into the editorial workflow, as I mentioned or showed earlier, and then start that process from manuscript to designing the prototypes to getting the final layouts and enabling the image workflows, the text workflow, and all the different parallel processes that have to take place throughout the production process here. So there are things like AI tools. Again, I can't show everything in the time frame that we have, but then there are also some functionality that we have done, and I will show, like AI copy fit. And this initially, to Danny's point, was at first a little scary for people when we introduced this. Wait a minute, this is going to copy fit for me? I don't know that I like that. And so we actually have to take a step back through prototyping and say, okay, let's rethink this. And we don't want to present somebody with a full copy fitted content, right? Let's give them an assistant and give them the reins to control it. And Danny, I think that you wanted to elaborate here a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So we worked firsthand with a lot of different writers. And when we showed them, okay, here's an article that has been copy fit for your particular page, the editors immediately rejected it and said, nope. First of all, I need to be in the driver's seat. It's missing words that I want. I have to be able to say yes. I need to be able to make changes. And we said, okay, we'll come back to you on that. So we sat down with our development team. We revised some of the options, and we came back and we got back into the same room with those editors one more time. And we said, okay, we're going to try something here. We're going to make some suggestions of what we think each sentence could be copy wrote as. And it's always just the longer sentences, because if it's a really short sentence, cutting it down even shorter isn't going to help. So we were looking for longer sentences. We had a whole bunch of prompts that were being considered. And then you could see the editors say, oh, well, this is cool. Can I start using this? And so we went from the editors who were being skeptical, who didn't like the tool, to all of a sudden, wait, can we start using this today? Can you put this on our server? How soon can we start using this tool? So it was only in the spirit of exploration and seeing what was possible that we got to a solution that people really genuinely loved. And so it's having those small conversations, seeing what's possible, seeing how people need to accomplish their goal, instead of, again, having the goal of let's replace people, because it's not about that. It's about making people's jobs easier.
Yep. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and show just a short video on exactly how the tool works here. And again, I can't show all the end to end because that would take many, like I said, webinars or time to show everything. So let me just go ahead and play this real quick.
Okay, we're not getting the audio, but I can talk over it, so no problem there. So what you see here is that we have an article. Keep playing the video.
Yep. Let me just click here real quick. There we go.
All right, so here we have an article that is going to pop up on screen. And this is a look into our interface. And you can see that that red line denotes that I have overset text. So I want to make sure that all of that overset text fits within the article. We're going to use AI CopyFit to suggest some sentences that maybe need to be trimmed. This will take a moment for it to be sent off to our AI and then to come back and generate some new responses. Again, there's a lot of different things being considered here, making sure that proper names never get changed, making sure that shorter sentences are avoided. Once that's done, you'll see a screen that pops up here on stage, and you can see the original sentence in one color and then the new sentence in green. So it's going to suggest what each of the sentences are. You can also write directly into this. So for example, if one of the changes you don't like, you can go back in, you can change it, you can edit it. And at any point in time, you can save your changes and then they will take place back in the article. You can review how much of the sentences need to be fully revised or how many more sentences you need to go. This process you could run multiple times. So let's say, for example, I go in, I run through, oh, I didn't make enough changes. You can run the process once more to make it even shorter. So a lot of the people and editors that we were working with came to us and said, wow, this is great, because sometimes when I'm copy fitting or I need suggestions and it's all this content is really great, it helped them see, okay, here are some places where maybe I could make some trims. Here are some different ways that I could word things. So it helps them get their ideas flowing while at all times they remained in the driver's seat. So that's a little bit of a look at the AI CopyFit tool that we currently have.
And then at any point, again, as an editor, you can go back and look at the version within the editorial system, the version history, I should say, to see who's made what changes, when those changes were made, and so on. So then let's talk about some book publishing success stories here. We'll go ahead and just talk about a few use cases. At one of our publishers, there was a challenge for finding efficiencies in the workflow, in production workflows. So we needed to really dive into how it is that the process is being managed, from identifying a title, the author, getting the manuscript, how that manuscript is going to go back and forth between the different individuals, how that's going to come in-house and out-of-house. So you had to think about external contributors and how to facilitate those external contributors to be able to deliver content outside of your systems that are being used internally. So there was, again, the challenge of being able to repurpose existing content, so legacy or even newly acquired imprints, for example, and the data, the files, the assets were scattered. So it took a long time to really be able to capture, gather, and be able to put everything together, so in order to reuse and repurpose existing content. So then what we did was, again, we identified where the bottlenecks are. So there is a combination here. Technology is not going to solve everything. Software is not going to solve everything. AI is not going to solve everything. You really need to look at the process and marry the two together, and really determine what it is that you're trying to get to, and what is it that you're trying to solve. And that will then bring about the necessary workflow changes within the process that will then be fruitful and help that time to market and production process be reduced. So again, we centralized the source, right, by having a system like title management in place that really helped, first of all, see what's coming, but enable not just the people that are creating the content, but also sales and marketing. So it's really important to have them be exposed to what is available, what is in production, for example, and what can we show? What can we show at sales conferences and really promote what's coming up next for our organization? And having these centralized and integrated systems really helped enable those teams and departments as well as the content that they need to create, right? And then have the approval and transparencies between editorial, between sales and marketing, and really get the two those two roles in sync moving forward. And then again, this helped in the creation of templates that then reduces the time to create the content. Now, templates is a really can also be a scary word because a lot of times it's thought of as, well, I really need to design this content or title in a certain manner, so I can't go from a template. And when we talk about templates, it's having just the foundation baseline so that when it comes time for the production process, for conversions from print to digital or from digital to print, then those two are more readily able to be transformed much quicker. So that's really what we're talking about with templates. And Danny, being a designer,
I'm going to jump in.
Sure has.
Yep, I'll take over. Okay, so as someone with a deep design background, I understand not every page can be templatized. There are going to be some pages that are always bespoke, especially if we're talking about children's literature or chapter openers, things that are really unique. I get it. However, there's always going to be a starting point, right? Because even if you're working on a textbook, you probably have some paragraph styles that are going to be the same throughout your entire book. It's putting things into a template format so that you can flow in that content more easily, so that you can do all of that necessary tweaks even faster. You're not having to do the boring copy paste, find this old file, resave it to make it a new one. It's having everything give you a faster starting point. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. So then another challenge at a different client is, again, their archive material. The dam that they had in place was outdated. It didn't have the necessary information or missing information. So again, it's not just about the software, it's about the process, it's about the individuals. So having a dam in place and then having the proper resource, the proper librarian, archivist that can help curate that content so that you can address the challenges of having a lot of assets, a lot of duplication. It's disjointed, and it's not, possessing all the information that you need. That's where starting with title management, going through the editorial process, pushing things to an archive, and that metadata traveling from the initial starting point of that project all the way through its flow to when something gets archived is essential in every organization. And having that integration and one point of source that carries over so that there isn't additional work or duplicate work. Mistakes that happen, right? Because of manually typing in BISEC information, ISBNs, and so on, et cetera. So again, we were able to really streamline and restructure with a dam all of the assets, both legacy, but also incorporated in the WIP, in the work in progress. So there was then a solution put in place where, again, everything starts in title management. Things are triggered in the work in progress and then pulled from the dam into the work in progress as well. And that, again, that really helped with the end-to-end overall timeline that it took to get to market much quicker. Not only that, but with the dam and metadata and the information, then you can distribute more efficiently and properly to all the different mediums that were talked about earlier by Dale and Danny, Amazon, social at the same time, right? So you have the ability to then take content, push it out to your printer, push it out to EPUB distribution, push it out to social for marketing purposes in sync at the same time. So what does this do? It brings wins. We see a minimum of 30% production and reduction in time to market, in the time that it takes to actually create the content or recreate, reprint, and repurpose the content as well. So the feedback that we get from our clients is, to get to this point, there was a lot of work that we put into it. It's a project. It does take taking a lens to your organization, to all the different roles and individuals and how they're working, and then help enable them to become more efficient with these tools, right? So that's the feedback that we get, is that it was a process, but once we got everything lined up, now we're seeing the year after year benefits of it. So in the US alone, in the recent years, book publishing industry generated $29 billion in revenue. But 16% of this is in ebooks and digital. So again, when you have the foundation, the tools and the processes in place and the workflows, that's going to enable you to then generate the different mediums that you need, the different formats that you need for digital and print. And again, you might have a market that is strictly print, or a market that is strictly digital, but you see that there is potential for the conversion of one to the other. Having these tools in place, again, transparency also helps with kind of breaking that mindset of print centric or print first, which is also very challenging, as I'm sure Danny and Dale can attest to, being in design and production. That's how we started back in the day, and then it was this change over the years, as Danny mentioned, where every 20 years something changed, and now it's all digital first. That's all we think about, and now everybody's just thinking AI when we need to think about how we're going to use that. So, but that we're seeing the gains year over year because of this, and then the growth potential, right? So again, the value back in 2024 was 160 billion, right? And it's estimated to double more than that. So you have to have these tools and foundations in place to be able to keep up with the market, with the growth, and the challenges that are yet to come. There are more and more challenges that we are going to experience with distribution, for example, right? That's another area that we need to address. That, again, having a good title management and good source of record will help facilitate those challenges that we will be facing. So what that 30% increase really leads to is giving your creatives, your writers, your editors, your authors, your creative designers more time, which leads to them really shining as SMEs, as those subject matter experts, and really helping them enable to use their tool set and their creative value that they bring to the content, to the organization. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to first of all, thank you for the time here. We will go ahead and move on to Michelle, I believe, for some Q&A. But if there are any additional follow-ups, again, we could definitely do more and more webinars on the tools, on demos and so on. But time-wise, just didn't have enough. There's too much to cover, essentially. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, and we can do a Q&A.
Yes, let's see if there are any questions. Thank you for all of that great information. And I have one question actually to kick off with. As you move into a new digital asset management system or start on your first digital asset management system, what do you find the biggest pitfalls are, and what should people be prepared to, be ready for, really?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's the knowledge, or especially if you're coming into it new, it's not trying to just put in the piece of software. Again, it really has to do with looking at what you're trying to get to, what are your challenges. So defining your goals to really be able to capture or say, yes, we succeeded in what we're trying to accomplish, and here are the points that we addressed. So that's one thing that I would say, is that, again, it's really important to partner up with somebody that has gone through this process, because there are a lot of tools out there that you can just start to use. People are using Google Drive, and even Google Drive, something like that. Like, really, there's a proper ways to use different tools. So just, again, not falling into the concept that the piece of software will solve the challenges. It's really about the process, and then how to properly implement that, let's say, DAM or editorial system for your organization, for your individuals and your roles.
I think yeah, I'm going to second that, Louis. And I think that it's also having someone in the room who can help you understand, because I think we've all been at some point or another in our careers have suddenly, oh, hey, you need to go learn this new software. Here's a training video. That's it. And suddenly you're, what is this? Why do I need this software? What does it do? So having someone that says, hey, here's what this means for you. Here's how we're going to do it together. We're going to set this up. And having that holding hand along the way just makes such a difference.
Another thing I would point out is having again, a key group of stakeholders that are helping to drive this to proof of concept this before you push it, or before you kick it off in the organization, so that when you do training, to Danny's point, you're training to the workflow, not just here's all the bells and whistles of a DAM. So you're really training to that editorial role and what they will be doing within the system, to that designer, to that writer, to that author, and specifically what their role is. Because take Word, for example. There are a million things that we could do with Word, but really we focus on those 20 features, for example, that really help us in our tasks in creating content. Right?
Makes sense. All right, I'll give everyone last chance to put a question in the Q&A as we cascade towards the end of here and the top of the hour. And if you didn't hear yet, American Pope.
That's right.
The white smoke has done, and my phone's been blown up with everybody talking about it. All right, let's see what's in the Q&A here. Is the platform pointing to assets from the DAM that are needed, or are the assets actually retrieved and deposited where needed? Or do the assets not need to be moved and can be accessed and worked on within the DAM?
They do not have to be moved. So really what it is that what's driving it is the metadata. So as you're changing from title management and updating information at the asset level, that's what's enabling either things to be visible or not visible to individuals, or it's triggering those actions to then source out, essentially. But that's the one thing that we see at a lot of clients is they're moving things from one location to another throughout their workflow process. Everything just needs to live in the one place, and it's the metadata that's changing throughout as people are working on items.
And the versioning that you have in certain systems, which allows it to be, you can control not having duplicate files and having mistakes possibly come through by someone using the wrong version of a file. So that's also a useful aspect.
And I'm going to encourage you all to put up your contact slide again,
Sure.
so that we've got it here at the end of the recording. If anyone has any questions, and feel free to, Dan, drop your email in the chat as well. All right, next question. Does the platform auto-generate some metadata?
Yes, so we are currently, that's interesting. We are currently looking into generative AI for imagery. So taking a look at what is in the DAM, searching and then compiling and creating, objects or imagery, I should say. And that's something that we are, again, beta testing and looking for clients and partners to give feedback on. So there's a few different initiatives that are happening on generating content from the dam as well.
Great question. All right, let's see if there's any last questions. Thank you so much for your support of PubWest and for giving us all this great information today. And Dan has put his email in the chat. If you have follow-up questions, please reach out to him. All right, great. It looks like you've done a great job of telling us what we need to know. So we're going to send everyone back into the ether to have a great rest of their Thursday. Take care, all.
Thanks,
Thank you
all.
so much.
Thanks.